Welcome to Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast series about communication skills in the workplace. I'm your host, John Witzman. Join me as I speak with industry professionals and Conestoga faculty and alumni to explore their journeys with reading and writing skills. Follow us as we talk about how communications learning has changed over the years, how these skills are used in a wide range of industries, and the future of workplace communications. And hello, we're here with Alex Lubczuk, Construction Project Coordinator at Grand River Hospital. Hi, Alex. Welcome.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. We're going to have a great conversation today talking about reading and writing between the lines, everything to do with communication skills in the workplace. But before we get there, I want to take you back to your early days in school when you were first taking courses that asked you to work on reading and writing skills, communication skills. What was that like for you?
In my experience, I graduated in 2018, so I would have started in 2014. But yeah, it was a fantastic course. At the time, you're kind of, almost wondering why, to an extent, why we're going through all this. We did, English in high school every year, but
Was that something that you were connected to when you were taking those grade 9 English class, grade 10 English class? Was that a bit of a roll of the eyes when you saw that on the timetable?
Yeah, absolutely. If you recall back in the early days of high school, you're doing Shakespeare and a lot of stuff that is, feels at the time totally irrelevant to, anything that you could be doing in the workplace or in post-secondary, anything like that, right?
Did you have a sense in that sort of early going of your high school career that you were looking towards a career in trades, in construction, in project management?
At the time, no, I was a bit more focused and geared towards business and engineering, I guess, a little bit. But just kind of as I continued through my scholastic career, I just focused a bit more on architecture, business, construction, engineering, and that type of stuff. So it was good. Never really focused too much on English, but you have to always have a key attention to the communication skills that come along with anything in the professional setting.
Do you think you had a sense of that back then? Like this is maybe a necessary component. It might not sort of fire my jets, but it's something I have to do.
Absolutely. You can't see me right now, but I'm definitely nodding my head to John talking. But no, absolutely. Just because communication is everything. Without being able to communicate properly, what can you do? You can't convey the message. You can't talk to different contractors. You can't talk to different stakeholders in any kind of job or any type of professional setting, right? And even as a student, you have to be able to convey the message to the professors to get the grades that you want to get, right? It's a super, super important skill to have. And something that is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but something that's often overlooked and not really focused on when you're in the early goings and the early stages of your scholastic career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that you're bringing up here that I'm excited to get to, but let's stay here in this educational space just a little bit longer.
Sure.
Can you remember seeing sort of around the classroom and noticing some of your classmates feeling sort of disconnected from the English class, from the communications assignments?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember back in the day being almost forced to put pen to paper, if you will, or typing up essays and doing book reports that you never wanted to do, or reading books that were at the time seemed so irrelevant to anything that you were focused on or interested in. But like you said, it was kind of a necessary evil and at least considered an evil at the time. But really, as it progresses, you kind of look back now, being a 32-year-old adult, you look back and go, wow. Thank God my parents forced me to read, or my teachers forced me to do a little bit extra here and there.
Well, I was going to ask, did you have any strategies to help you sort of get through that motivation sort of obstacle, or was it just a sort of blunt force, like I've got to do this, and so that's the driver?
I guess my strategy would have been procrastination and hard deadlines where you have to kind of work a little bit later, than you would, but which is not recommended at all. But
hey, but we can can be honest here in the walls of the recording studio. This is something that I relate to as well, even though I am now a communications professor. That was very much my approach as well throughout most of my educational career. There was a lot of procrastination. There was a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sort of hesitance. And then at the last minute, sort of burst out of a cannon.
Yeah.
But I can also remember that experience had a sort of elation to it, that I was sort of freed to finally speak and put ideas on the page. And that was exciting. Do you remember having that feeling in that last moment of, I've got to do this? That push was sort of freeing?
100%. So at the end of it all, a lot of, after graduating and getting my degree, a lot of it, you know, the content that you learn is fantastic, right? And it's so applicable to what I'm doing now. But I remember walking away after graduating and just going, the biggest thing that I learned is how I can push myself and how I can, you know, if I need to go that extra mile, I will, and I have the capability of doing it. And I know it might not necessarily be my A+ work at the 11th hour, but at least I know I can push through, you know, that how should I put it, that feeling of tiredness, or you know, maybe grab an extra cup of coffee just to kind of get you over that hump. Yeah. And that was something that translates into all aspects of life right now, right?
I think that's a great insight and something that I try to discuss with students as well, that there are the sort of stated objectives in any given assessments, right? The course learning outcomes. And those are the sort of explicit curriculum, but there's also a kind of invisible curriculum that
it's personal growth, right? You know, it's amazing. It's amazing what comes from it.
Those small twitch muscles, right? that help you to balance.
For sure.
We should also address the fact that you are an alumni of Conestoga College. And so you were a student fairly recently. When did you study at Conestoga?
2014 to 2018 was my undergrad degree. It was architecture, project management, and facilities management out of the Cambridge campus.
Okay. And you took Com 1085 as part of that education, right?
Compulsory course, for
yes,
sure.
that's right. Did you have the yellow textbook at the time with the lemons and the limes on the cover?
I believe so.
You did,
I think
right?
I still have it at home.
You still have it at home. I'm sure
you brought it.
Sure, yeah, that would have been great. You can frame that one. Not in use anymore. Do you have much recollection of that experience? Do you remember feeling like you were uncertain at the time how that was fitting into your sort of overall program, or by that time did you have already that sense that, hey, I do need these communication skills to be successful in the workplace?
No, I, for the most part, I took all of my courses fairly seriously, I would say. Yeah. So, you know, nothing was really kind of pushed by the wayside, if that answers your question. But no, like I said before, it's just such a key component of everything that you need moving forward is the communication. And, you know, it's often easy to overlook kind of the comm courses, or like the English related, or you know,
sure, maybe soft skills we'll call it.
Yeah, exactly. It's often to kind of look past and focus on the more targeted courses that are, you know, more focused on your degree.
Right.
But, you know, you can't forget the soft skills, as you put it, that are kind of, they round everything out. They really make you a working professional and somebody that's reliable and that can, like I said before, can convey messages clearly and concisely, and that's really, you know, sharpening all your skills.
Let's get into that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you see yourself drawing on this skill set over the course of a day, a week. You know, what does that actually entail? You mentioned some examples already, but if you would give us some more examples of how you communicate with people in writing, you know, what kind of reading you have to do throughout the course of a day, what kind of documents you have to produce.
Yeah, so in my field, and now I'll talk kind of over my career holistically. Sure. But when I started at Walter Fady, it was a engineering firm out of Kitchener, and I started just doing technical writing. Okay. So basically, just doing reports, going out, walking through buildings, doing a condition assessment building condition assessment is what they're called, and then basically just through technical writing, conveying what I saw and providing recommendations. So as you can imagine, I'm literally writing reports all day. I did that for a little over 5 years, right?
Wow.
So
Is that pen on paper with a clipboard?
Pen on paper and a clipboard while you're doing your site visit and your walkthrough, and then you come back and you take all your notes and your pictures and you review everything, and then you have to on the computer present it in a, how do we put it? We put it in an easy to read, doesn't have to be overly technical.
Right.
Don't use a lot of specific or technically, I don't know how you would put it.
You wouldn't want to use jargon.
Yeah, exactly. Something that, a high school student might be able to follow, because you don't know who, and not degrading towards high school students, but I'm just saying somebody, you just don't know who's going to be reviewing our reports. It's not an architect or an engineer every time that's going to be reading through this stuff, right? So, it was I don't know what I would be doing without stressing the communication side of things. So that's kind of how I got my start with respect to what you were asking about with the communications. But now on the day-to-day, like I remember going through these comm courses, and they actually teach you how to properly structure an email and how to, start with the beginning, right? You say, hello, John, comma, break, right? And then you go through and you have to actually structure it properly. And there is a proper structure on an email. And it's insane to see that how these other professionals that I deal with that didn't focus on their communications courses, that they try to write these emails in a professional setting, and you look at it and you're going, oh my God, like this is a colleague of mine or somebody that's higher up than I am or whatever, right? Like, and I'm going, oh my goodness.
That's fascinating to me, and it's a question that I do often ask people who I speak with in this context is to get some sense of what it's like amongst your colleagues, and do you notice that, and does it have an impact on your interaction with them? Does it affect your work?
100%. It might not necessarily affect my work, but it definitely does give you a kind of a preconceived notion or
interesting.
Of oh my God, I'm looking at this person, how they're, do I really want to get into this job with them, or how is it going to go if they can't even structure an email? How is it going to reflect in our job, right?
Right. So it does give you almost a window into the thinking process, right? If the thinking in this email seems cluttered or disorganized, what does that reflect?
100%. And it's just the attention to detail goes such a long way when it comes to communications back and forth, professional emails, whether it be technical drafting or technical writing, anything of that nature. But even like you said before, sitting in a meeting, and you and I are talking right now, just to be able to properly express what you're trying to say is not as easy as you think when you're in a pressure cooker or when you're surrounded by a bunch of people that you don't necessarily know, and that all kind of ties in with the communications and being able to read and write properly and being able to just express yourself properly.
Well, to that end of it being challenging, I'm curious to know when you first started out and you were doing your, I forget the name of the site visits.
Building condition assessments.
That's the one.
Sure.
Yeah, the BCAs.
BCAs.
And you're going around and you got your notes and you got your clipboard, and then you bring it back and you have to synthesize that. You have to read your notes and you have to pull out from that something that's going to be both meaningful but also accessible and readable to the audience. Did you find that was something that you struggled with at the beginning? Did you develop little shorthand techniques over time? Yeah,
for sure. It was any kind of stepping into the professional atmosphere is a challenge for any young person, for sure. But I just kind of had my processes, and you stick to what you know and what you learn through school and in the technical aspect, and you change things as you go. You learn different verbiages and stuff that's applicable, and that is not only applicable, but like I'm drawing a blank.
When you were
but
describing,
it's appropriate, right?
Yeah,
it's appropriate for kind of the audience that you're trying to talk to.
Oh my gosh, you took the words right out of my mouth, because this was something that came to my mind when you were describing your BCAs. It's almost identical to an assignment that we might have in mind in a comm course, where we have a specific audience and a specific purpose in mind, and we have to account for what does that audience know, what do they not know, what do they need, what would be too much, and what's
a skill,
and that's a skill,
and that's a honed skill and a sharpened skill. You can't just pick something up and start and do it. You have to practice it and work at it like a sword needs a whetstone, like a brain needs a book, right?
There you go.
know?
So when you went from Walter Fady to Grand River Hospital,
There was one stop in between.
There was okay.
Yeah. I was a project coordinator and estimator at Steed & Evans, a heavy civil general contractor.
Okay. So as you're going from one to the next, to what extent, if any, were these skills part of the hiring process, the job selection process? Did you get the sense that was obviously not the only thing that your prospective employers were looking for, but was that something that was on their mind at all when they were looking at you?
100%. And when it comes to writing cover letters, when you're through the application process,
yep.
I talked to my boss, Kevin Wilson from Grand River Hospital. If he's going to listen to this,
shout out Kevin.
Shout out Kevin, Director of Facilities, right on, man. But no, he told me right away that my cover letter and my resume is kind of what stood out, and then through the actual interviewing process. So not to toot my own horn a little bit, it was 60 applicants. I was whittled down into 4. And then of the 4 that were interviewed, I guess I was the lucky one.
Right.
And no, he told me right away that my experience and the way that I wrote in my cover letter really stood out compared to a lot of other applicants, and that just kind of whittles it down and thins the herd, if you will. And
yeah, that's really interesting to hear, and probably significant and jumping out for anybody who might be listening, because huge. Of those 60 people who applied, they probably all had the core requirements, right? They probably all knew the definitions. They probably all knew the engineering.
Yep.
And what makes someone stand out from a group of 60 down to a group of 4, down to the 1, might be that ability to make your personality jump off the page, right? That idea of voice.
And like you just said before, tailoring it to your audience a little bit, and knowing how to, I don't want to say suck up, but just you have to understand. Yeah, present yourself. Exactly, a good way to put it. You have to be able to present yourself to, I know at Grand River Hospital, I'm probably talking to an engineer or an architect or somebody from that, professional aspect, or at Steed & Evans, you're talking to a bit more a GC or a general contractor related. So whereas the verbiage has to be a little bit different, right? And that's huge. It's so important to, like you said, stand out and present yourself,
When you're in your various sort of stages of your career, are you coming up against a lot of sort of form-specific, sort of genre-specific writing? You mentioned that one assessment that you wrote earlier. I would imagine that there's a lot of that very sort of specific writing where there are expectations in this type of document. We have to do this.
Absolutely.
Is there much explicit training on the job for those kinds of formal writing tasks, or do you just have to sort of are they connected to the things that you would have seen in your formal education, or are you just sort of picking one up and saying, okay, it looks like these are the expectations, let me conform to them?
No, you can you have to almost need an example to go off of before, right? So you can I don't want to say you pull information from it, but if they can provide you, or an employer can provide you, or even if you tie off of one of your old school projects or an old report that I wrote, something like that, right? That's more or less how I would apply it and use it in my professional setting. But kind of like what you were saying before, like there's some days where I'm talking to our CFO through a communique, or to the masses through a communique, or if I'm just talking to a contractor or a sub or a colleague, it's totally different, right? Everything is different every day, so you have to be really agile on which way you're going about, but you also have to be proactive and think about how, take that extra 5-10 minutes and 20 minutes maybe just to review and think about how you're actually going to apply this and how I should frame this.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was actually going to be my very next question, is listening to you talk about the range and variety of people that you communicate with throughout the course of the day. That's a big range, a big variety. And I was curious to know whether you were just sort of reacting almost on instinct, or were you able to take the time to sort of prepare a little bit for who you're speaking with?
So that's a learned skill, like I said,
Yeah.
and I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
You have to really.
Was there an example where you spoke to to person A the way you would speak to person B?
Nothing off the top of my head, but
okay.
just going through, going back and reviewing emails after you sent them and just going, oh no,
Right.
like just littered with grammatical errors before you send it out, and you're just going, why did I do that? But and that just kind of ties it into take that extra 10 minutes, 20 minutes to sit and review and actually think, read through your email or read through your document that you're about, or your report that you're about to send off, and it could be to you, John, like from a student's perspective, or talking to a different stakeholder in a job or a project that's ongoing, right? You always have to take that extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes to review and really make sure you're talking to the right audience in that appropriate,
I love the way you describe it as a learned skill, because for me, listening to you describe all of these sort of applied these applied skills, these skills applied in context, I'm thinking about them in sort of tracing them back to how those skills might have been developed, and so I'm hearing the proposal or the outline, right? The planning document, and then I'm hearing the revision stage that happens after. So the first draft to the final draft.
Absolutely. And that's all stuff that you guys teach in communications 100%, and it's so applicable, right? It is so very applicable in every, and it doesn't even have to be in writing, just even speaking and reading and reading comprehension and everything like that. It's so applicable and it's so necessary.
Do you feel, looking back over the course of your career, maybe from your early days, maybe as a student to your sort of first job out of school to where you're at now, can you sort of situate yourself in a progression and say, yeah, I'm more capable of communicating succinctly, concisely what I need to say in no more than what I need to say it?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said before, it's learned, it's something that you have to really, it's trial by fire and trial by error.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you have to make a few mistakes, like we were saying, in order to kind of look back and reflect and be like, oh no, I'm not going to do that again, and learn from it and really understand what it was you were trying to say or what you were talking about via email or whatever the case may be, right?
Which brings us to the current time that we're in, where we've got technological devices all around us. We're kind of constantly in communication via text or email. And now we've got generative AI thrown into the mix. What do you see on the horizon? How are these communications technologies filtering into the work that you and your colleagues do?
Well, to be honest, I haven't experienced anything like it yet. I don't know too much about it apart from what I read in the news and through our brief conversations about it. But that's interesting. It is.
It's almost like there's a little pocket of society that's still protected from it, right? Because when you're dealing with this particular building project and this particular material and this problem that is specific to this job site, ChatGPT doesn't know about that yet.
No. And I mean, it can cook up a whole lot of different scenarios, but is it applicable? Absolutely not. At least you hope. Because then I might be out of a job.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, it's certainly something that is in the news and it's on everybody's minds. Is this technology going to help us in our field? Is it going to replace us in our field? Is it going to hurt us in our field? But it's kind of amazing and ironic and maybe a little bit surprising too that a field like project management might be one of the areas where human writing and human communication is thriving.
Yeah,
still.
Absolutely. Crazy to think about that, eh? That's it's in terms of longevity, it's really, really promising and makes me feel good, to be honest.
Yeah. Although perhaps there are some project management students listening to this thinking, oh shoot, I thought that I was, I had just arrived at the right time and that I was going to have these skills taken care of for me.
I don't know what to say about ChatGPT. What is it, GPT?
ChatGPT, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about it yet. I think it's, like you said, it's exciting and it's new and it's different for sure, but I don't know, like we were saying before off air, when it's when something just makes something up out of thin air,
right?
How can you rely on something like that, right? Even though the writing form might be, Nobel Prize winning, but at the same time, if they're just pulling facts that aren't real, or I guess that's kind of counterintuitive.
It is facts that aren't real. Isn't that? That's, right. I think that's something unique to our time.
Right.
But I know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about facts that aren't real. Can you imagine certain writing products or being more susceptible to this stuff? Maybe RFPs.
Yeah, that's a great call. Yeah, like proposal writing for sure. Scope outlining, especially if it's. And again, I'm totally ignorant as to how ChatGPT works, but if you just, you could say maybe, building A, building B, building C has this, and go.
Right.
Let's see what happens, right? But again, what if they create something like a solar eclipse that happened at this time that never actually happened? Or
right. What if there's hard water in the region and that's going to affect the soil? Who knows?
Exactly. And how can you factor all that stuff into it? You can't, right? And there's so many things that happen on the fly and on the go, where you actually have to have the human interaction and the eyes or the boots on the ground to make those decisions, right? That can't, AI can't support it, I guess, is what I would say.
Can you imagine, are there parts of your job that you wish you could sort of outsource to intelligent robots?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a good question. I've never really thought about it that way, how much easier some things would be. But just kind of mundane emails back and forth that you just are kind of just, you have to deal with kind of thing. But you just, it is what it is. And I'm sure everybody goes through it. As a professor, you go through it and, things like that. But apart from that,
and yet those are the reps, right? Those are the reps that you were talking about that
Absolutely.
Gained experience.
Absolutely. And again, like you said, like knowing when I can just send a one-liner or when I actually have to structure an email or a letter or anything like that, a proposal, RFP, scope of work, all that stuff.
What do you think that current students in project management and the related fields, what do you think that you might be able to say to them that would be sort of helpful or encouraging or motivating if they're listening to this, in week 7 and they've got comm assignments along with 4 other assignments? How do they stay plugged into this course while they've got all this other stuff going on in their life?
Well, as a project manager, it's about proper planning. So
interesting.
Don't leave it to the last minute to try to get everything done, because things will fall through the cracks. And as you'll learn quickly in the field or in the professional setting, that if you let things fall through the cracks, it will cost you dearly, not only as a professional, but in terms of actual monetary and fiscal issues, right? When it comes to your owners or, your stakeholders and different things like that. So
I love that idea of the homework assignment, the communications project being viewed as a part of a larger set of a project, right?
That's what it is.
And that's what it is.
That's what it is.
It doesn't have to be, doesn't have to set your heart afire, right? But it's a task, it's an assignment, it's a requirement. And so now your challenge is, how do I make time for this? How do I use the resources that I have to make sure that it meets a high standard, and then carry on with the rest of my responsibilities so that the overall project is complete?
And it's to tie it into what you were talking about as kind of like the holistic, I don't want to call it a soft skill, but the personal development and personal growth.
Yeah.
There's things every day that I deal with that I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Just as a husband, as a person.
I don't know if you wanted to go there first.
Right. But, and that's just kind of part of it. You have to just buckle down, look at it and go, okay, if I can set up 2 hours to frame my thoughts on this project A, that's a step one. That's a move in the right direction. Set it down, move it aside, move on to another project and get that done. Or go hang out with your friends or do something, just to go for a run, break up the monotony of every day, right? And then, just those incremental steps. And like we were saying, that whole personal development is so important when it comes to project management, but not just that, but just, as a professional, you can't let things slip through the cracks, because they're just such a poor reflection on you as a professional, and your capabilities. And, you can do 15 great things, but if you do one bad thing that sticks out and costs everybody a lot of money or time or headache, those 15 things are going to fall by the wayside pretty quick.
Right. That's, I think, so insightful and so helpful to people listening. And you've also given me a great idea for a cross-program assignment where the project management students work with other students to develop a completing all your assignments program.
That's a great idea.
Right?
That's a great idea.
We'll continue this one offline. You'll show me how to actually get all of that work done on time because as a communications student, I still have those procrastination habits, I think, in my genes. So
it's hard to curb those. It's hard, for sure. It takes a lot of time.
Alex, this has been great. Thank you so much for all these insights that you've brought to the table. I think that there's so much here for students to connect with and to relate to and to draw motivation from. So I really appreciate your time and thanks very much again for being here.
Thanks for having me, John. This was great.
And that marks the end of another episode of Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by me, John Witzman, on behalf of the Communications Department and School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Conestoga College. You can find other episodes of this series on our YouTube channel, Reading and Writing Between the Lines. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.